Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephania Cox. President Biden is returning to D.C. this afternoon. He's tested negative for COVID ahead of a meeting with Israel's Prime Minister and an address to the nation on Wednesday. Growing support for VP Kamala Harris's run for the White House. This time, endorsement comes from two top congressional Democrats. U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle has resigned following national outcry over the July 13th Trump assassination attempt. We'll have those details. Lawmakers continue investigating the attempt on Trump's life. A 70-year-old congressman climbs up on the roof to get first-hand evidence about what Secret Service is saying. Hundreds of people are stranded again today as Delta Airlines continues to cancel flights. Federal regulators are probing the company, and they want to hear directly from passengers. Hundreds of illegal immigrants from Central and South America are headed toward the U.S. We'll tell you why they're making the journey. Palestinian factions, including rivals Hamas and Fatah, agree to form an interim government during negotiations in China today. Israel dismisses the idea. Just in, President Biden has tested negative for COVID. With his symptoms resolved, he's returning to D.C. this afternoon, according to the White House's schedule. And he'll make a speech tomorrow. The president will address the nation from the Oval Office on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's regarding his decision to drop his 2024 Democratic re-election bid. Biden wrote on X that he'll speak on what lies ahead and how he'll finish the job for the American people. You can watch the speech right here on NTD. And President Biden will still meet with the visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday. Today, GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social saying he's also looking forward to Netanyahu's visit at Mar-a-Lago. The meeting is rescheduled to Friday. And more support today for Vice President Kamala Harris as she makes her bid for the Democratic presidential nomination. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries announced today they're endorsing her. The lawmakers say the party is rallying behind her.
So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris.
Vice President Kamala Harris has excited the community. She's excited the House Democratic Caucus, and she's exciting the country. And so I'm looking forward to sitting down with her.
Both men also praised President Biden for his decision to leave the race this past weekend. The endorsement by the two congressional leaders comes on the heels of an endorsement by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The California Democrat announced Monday that she's supporting Harris for the White House. And U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle has resigned, according to an email sent out to her staff. This is after a tense hearing before the House Oversight Committee yesterday surrounding the Trump assassination attempt on July 13th. After hours of questioning, both Republican and Democratic Party lawmakers were frustrated by Cheatle's testimony. She acknowledged the assassination attempt was the Secret Service's most significant operational failure in decades, but refused to give many specific details. She also insisted she was still the right person for the job yesterday, but in her resignation email today, she took full responsibility for securing the security lapse at the Trump rally. Cheatle had served in the Secret Service for 27 years. She became director in 2022. Secret Service Deputy Director Ronald Rowe has now been appointed acting director of the agency. That's according to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. And reacting to the director of Secret Service stepping down, House Speaker Mike Johnson said that she did the right thing.
But she did the right thing. Look, our reaction, the immediate reaction to her resignation is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats. Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency. It has an incredibly important responsibility in protecting presidents, former presidents, and other officials in the executive branch, and we've got a lot of work to do. The task force that we'll be putting together is going to be very important.
I still think there needs to be an investigation into Director Cheatle or former Director Cheatle's role in the attempted assassination of President Trump. There may be criminal charges coming in the future.
I don't understand why she came to Congress yesterday if she was going to give so little information. They have information about what happened. And she even acknowledged she had information, and she just refused to give it to Congress and give it to the American public.
As you're hearing now, many questions remain regarding the attempt on former President Trump's life. Why didn't the Secret Service place a sniper on the roof, for example? A 70-year-old lawmaker climbs up there seeking hard evidence. NTD's Ariane Pastar has more.
Tuesday marked the second of 3 hearings investigating the assassination attempt of former President Trump. Just a day prior, on Monday, multiple lawmakers from the House Homeland Security Committee traveled to Pennsylvania to visit the site of the shooting. Secret Service previously said they didn't place a sniper on the roof from which Trump was shot because the roof is too steep.
I'm a 70-year-old man, and this roof is not a big deal. So for somebody to tell me that Secret Service agents couldn't have been here, that's crazy.
He is some 50 years older than the shooter. And so my question is, do you agree with the assessment of the former Secret Service director that the roof was so sloped that it created safety concerns?
I can't agree with that statement, sir.
This witness is Colonel Christopher Paris. He's the commissioner of Pennsylvania State Police. But the committee had actually invited different witnesses, namely Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle. Cheatle resigned shortly before the hearing, and the 2 others denied testifying. Democratic Congressman Lou Correa also went to Pennsylvania on Monday. He says he found out that some people are afraid of speaking out.
I had local law enforcement officers, local electeds coming to me, whispering to me, there's more here to the story. We need to talk about what actually happened.
Some of the key issues lawmakers pointed out during Tuesday's hearing are Secret Service not being able to communicate with local law enforcement during the shooting, Secret Service not securing the surrounding areas such as the roof, a nearby water tower and more, and law enforcement not removing the shooter after he was identified as a suspicious person. Investigations are still ongoing. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
Next, Delta Airlines is under federal investigation as it struggles to recover from last week's cyber outage. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg announced today the investigation will look into the airline's continued flight disruptions and treatment of stranded passengers.
Delta has canceled more than 400 flights so far today. That follows yesterday's cancellation of more than 1,200 flights. The cyber outage knocked the Atlanta-based carrier's crew scheduling system offline. The result? Thousands of angry and frustrated passengers stranded in airports around the country since last Friday. One of them, a federal worker who can only fly Delta, says Delta seems to be the only airline still dealing with this issue.
Southwest seems to be back up. United Airlines seems to be back up and running. You know, they're only at 2% cancellations, and, you know, Delta's nearing 20% this morning alone. It's only 9 a.m.
Secretary Buttigieg's investigation includes having stranded passengers contact him directly to find out how they're being treated by Delta. In his announcement on X today, he says all airline passengers have the right to be treated fairly. Delta says it's cooperating with the investigation. The global cybercomputer crash has forced one of the nation's largest air carriers to cancel or delay more than 7,000 flights since Friday. As Delta works to fix the problem, patience is wearing thin for some passengers.
Unfortunately, due to the stress is being yelled at times, people are being, you know, not the nicest to them, and they're doing their best, and it's not their fault.
Delta says it hopes to have operations back to normal by the end of this week.
A large caravan of illegal immigrants from Central and South America are moving toward the U.S. border on foot. The group includes men, women, and children from a dozen countries.
The caravan of about 1,500 people began its journey Sunday by crossing a nearby river into the southern Mexican border from Guatemala. They are trying to make it north in order to claim asylum using a social media app called CBP. The Customs and Border Patrol app allows individuals to legally enter the United States by getting appointments with U.S. Customs agents at the southern border to plead their cases. The app only works in Mexico City and northern Mexico states. The caravan is trying to reach the U.S. before the November elections. Many fear a win by former President Trump will prevent them from getting into the country. The GOP nominee for the White House has promised to close the southern border if elected. Illegal immigrants sometimes travel in large caravans across Mexico toward the U.S. to avoid being attacked by smugglers or detained by Mexican immigration agents.
And looking further abroad, Palestinian factions, including rivals Hamas and Fatah, agreed to end their divisions and form an interim government during negotiations in China today. Here's that story.
The statement said the Beijing declaration was signed by 14 factions, including rivals Hamas and Fatah, during a closing ceremony. Previous efforts by countries to reconcile Hamas and Fatah have failed to end 17 years of power-sharing conflict that have weakened Palestinian political aspirations. The meeting was held amid attempts by international mediators to reach a ceasefire deal for Gaza. Currently, Hamas runs Gaza and Fatah forms the backbone of the Palestinian Authority, which has limited control in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Israel has dismissed the deal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said his goal is to destroy the Iran-backed Hamas group, opposing its rule in a post-war Gaza administration.
And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to address a joint session of Congress this Wednesday. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez reports from the Capitol on the expectations for tomorrow's joint session of Congress.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to deliver a speech to a joint session of Congress this Wednesday at 2 p.m. And between 50 and 100 Democratic lawmakers are expected to boycott this speech.
I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu has any interest in getting to peace in the Middle East. He certainly hasn't had an interest in bringing home hostage families. And I think he may be shilling for Donald Trump.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's address to a joint session of Congress will be his fourth, marking a historic record that he previously shared with former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill.
Well, I mean, we have a special relationship with England. We also have a special relationship with Israel. And the Jews are God's chosen people. I believe that. And we need to protect them to the best of our ability because they are our longest standing and most trustworthy ally in a very troubled region of the world.
Vice President Kamala Harris will not participate in the joint session of Congress, and pro tempore President Senator Patty Murray refused to participate. So it would be the chairman of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, Senator Ben Cardin, who will preside over the joint session of Congress.
I'm not going to attend. I think that there are more appropriate things that the Prime Minister should be doing, like a ceasefire in the hostage negotiation. But, you know, it's fine. I think a lot of people will be going, and I've got some other events I've got to go to.
Do you have any reaction to Vice President Kamala Harris not presiding over the joint session of Congress, but meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at a future date?
No, I mean, she's a presidential candidate. She has a lot to do, and so I know she's going to have her meeting, which I think is good.
Not all Democrats were comfortable divulging whether or not they would participate in Wednesday's joint session of Congress.
It's none of your business whether I attend or not, frankly. I don't understand why everyone feels so empowered to ask that question. I'm here in Congress. I'll be doing my job.
Thank you for listening. Protesters will march around the perimeter of the Capitol around 11 a.m. on Wednesday. National Park Services expects at least 5,000 protesters to be demanding the immediate arrest of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Back to you, Steph.
All right, and when we come back, discover why this scientist quit processed foods. His revelations may surprise you. And is there relief for Americans looking to buy a home? We'll learn more about that after the break.
Freedom is not free, and neither is the truth. In order to bring you the facts, our reporters are out there on the front lines getting the true story. Some of them served 10 years of prison in China. We've been censored on social media. Our Hong Kong printing offices were set on fire, and we've been repeatedly attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. But no matter what, we believe that you deserve the truth, and so we'll continue to bring the truth to life. Head on over to getepic.com and try honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with YRefi, and they don't care about what happens with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com. YRefi, do well by doing good.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Welcome back. A former food scientist found himself unintentionally losing weight after quitting ultra-processed foods. NTD's Daniel Monahan has that report.
Ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, dominate the Western diet. They are engineered to be hyper-palatable, blending fats and carbs to make them irresistible and reduce people's sense of fullness. Barry Smith, a former food scientist who worked for major companies like Kellogg's and Coca-Cola, believes the food industry has gone too far.
But if the idea is that we want to create them in such a way that we can't stop eating them, or we want to create them and make them in a way that bypasses our normal system of intake regulation, then that's where I think things are going off the rails, and I began to get a little bit worried about it.
Smith says one example is the fizzy soda.
You can drink it when it's fizzy and cold, but if you let it get warm and flat, it's unpalatably sweet. Most people will think it tastes, far too sweet to continue drinking it. So that means carbonation, those little bubbles, are reducing sweetness and accentuating sourness, and that means you can bypass the taste receptors and the brain's usual way of saying, is this too sweet?
Smith says such products are especially problematic for those struggling with obesity.
We have to worry about products that are encouraging that kind of consumption and making it very difficult for our normal sensory mechanisms and regulation intake mechanisms to stop eating those foods.
The former food scientist says many ultra-processed foods use substitutes for real ingredients because they are cheaper and last longer, like emulsifiers and mayonnaise.
A lot of those emulsifiers are now found in mice studies to give mice colitis, irritable bowel syndrome. So we don't want to find too many artificial emulsifiers in our foods.
Smith, whose diet used to contain about 30 to 40% of UPFs, feels much better since cutting them out.
I just feel more energetic. I have lost weight without trying, and I don't feel hungry all the time, which is a huge relief. I'm not looking for cookies or chocolate or that afternoon snack.
His decision to cut ultra-processed foods was influenced by Dr. Chris Van Tulleken's book, Ultra-Processed People. The book says the average person in the US or UK gets about 67% of their diet from ultra-processed foods.
We have high levels of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. You look at France, where the percentage of ultra-processed food in the average diet is about 17.4 by comparison. They don't have the same diet-related diseases.
Smith advises scrutinizing labels on foods like snack bars or protein bars, which may claim to have no added sugar.
But then they might have apple concentrate, which is a very, very concentrated form of fruit sugar, making it incredibly sweet.
A quick hack, according to Smith, is to check your food label. If it contains unrecognizable chemical ingredients, it's probably an ultra-processed food. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Next, new numbers show nearly 40% of Americans worry they can't pay their bills. But there may be some relief on another front for American homebuyers. NTD's Don Ma has those stories in today's Business Matters.
All right, thank you. Fingers crossed that things may soon be looking up for Americans interested in buying a new home. A recent report from real estate marketplace Zillow found that nearly 1 in 4 home sellers offered price cuts in June. And this is the highest level for that month since 2018. Another issue with home buying has been inventory. But according to the report, there were 23% more active listings last month compared to June last year. And that could be easing pressure for potential home buyers who feel like they have to make a snap decision. Homes are sitting on the market for an average of 15 days, which is 4 days longer than last year. Also freeing up inventory, lower mortgage rates. The average rate for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage fell this week to its lowest level since mid-March. And adding to the optimism about more affordable housing, the Fed is expected to begin lowering borrowing costs at its September meeting. The U.S. economy remains historically strong, but the high cost of living in parts of the country is stressing out many workers. A new poll finds nearly 40% of Americans worry most or all of the time that their family income won't be enough to meet expenses. This is up from 28% who expressed those concerns in December 2021. And it's similar to the numbers seen during the Great Recession 17 years ago. To cope, significant numbers of Americans said they are adding side jobs, cutting down on driving, and putting more expenses on credit cards. The findings underscore how, despite national statistics showing unemployment is low, inflation is cooling. Millions of Americans are still hurting from years of inflation. The CNN poll was conducted in June among a random national sample of more than 2,000 adults. Back to you.
Millions of Americans are on the road this summer, increasing traffic and testing tempers. Drivers need to concentrate on the road to avoid an accident and potentially higher insurance premiums. NTD speaks with a bank rate analyst to learn how motorists can save and stay safe.
Summer driving doesn't have to mean scorching costs for car insurance. But according to the most recent data from Bankrate, full coverage premiums go up an average of 43% after just one at-fault accident, which are more common during the warmer months.
During the summer, car crash rates are actually what's higher, and those incidents won't impact your insurance probably until the next renewal. But there are more teens on the road, more students home from school. There's more events where there's all-day drinking. People are doing a lot of road trips, so people are driving in places that they haven't been before and they're not as familiar with. That all increases the likelihood of being involved in an accident.
How do drivers know when it's time to look for new insurance?
I was an agent for 16 years, and I think the best time for people to look for insurance is whenever there is a life event change. Now, that can be, of course, getting married, divorced, adding a new driver to your policy, but sometimes it's smaller things, change in jobs, change in commute, because all of those factors change the rate of your policy.
Insurance premiums and looking for better coverage can be daunting. Martin says there are opportunities to save this summer, such as improving credit scores and taking certain driving courses.
But there are different discounts that people can qualify for. So depending where you live, you might qualify for a defensive driving discount. Now, some states only give those to people over the age of 55 and above. Some states like New York, you can take it at any time. I just took my course to save money.
What should drivers do to be better prepared on the road just in case of an accident?
One thing you want to do is make sure you have an emergency savings plan set aside so that if you do have an accident, you have money for your deductible. If you don't have collision coverage and have an accident, you have money set aside to pay for the damage to your vehicle.
How should drivers deal with road rage if they encounter another driver on the road?
This summer, again, is super hot. So one thing keep in mind is try and leave a little bit early so that if someone in front of you is going too slow, you don't get all overheated and started yelling. We really need to be careful because the roads are getting more dangerous and acts of road rage are becoming more and more frequent, and they're escalating in the level of violence.
Alcohol is another important factor. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, close to a third of crash fatalities involve drunk drivers. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And in lighter news, lastly, a baby kangaroo made its first public appearance this week at a New York City Bronx Zoo. Video shows the newborn marsupial poking its head out of its mother's pouch. Watch. The tiny tree kangaroo was born in December. An adult tree kangaroo weighs between 20 and 25 pounds. The joeys are about the size of a human thumb at birth. The animals only develop for about 6 weeks before they're born. It takes around 7 months for the young marsupials to start peeking out of their mom's pouch, as you see here. According to the zoo, there are only about 2,500 tree kangaroos in the wild and 42 in captivity, so a rare sight. Well, thank you so much for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephania Cox. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. See you tomorrow.